Hey, this is Misery Loves Company, a weekly social reading series hosted by miserytourism.com. Every Friday, we welcome transgressive and outsider writers to come and share their work with us. And it's Friday again, and we're having kind of a special event this time around. We're doing a launch reading for Miss Unity's book, Who Killed Mabel Frost? And I have a weird situation, okay? So Unity sent me an email earlier this afternoon. Apparently, he is having some technical problems. I know we had like really serious wind here a little bit farther upstate New York earlier this afternoon. So Unity is struggling to get his internet back online. So he's not here yet, but he asked me to like get this thing rolling anyway because a lot of people signed up and because he didn't want to have to reschedule at the last fucking minute, right? So we are going to get started. We're going to do this thing anyway, and hopefully, fingers crossed, Unity shows up before the evening is over. So anyway, first up reading tonight is Blick, Mark Blickley. Hey, Blick.
Okay. You have my two links, right?
I do indeed. I just put the first one in, and the second one's hitting the chat in a second.
Let's see. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we will be sharing for the pieces that we have links for, we'll be sharing them in the chat and on Twitter as people read. Okay. Floor
Okay.
is yours, Blake.
All right. Well, one thing I want to say about Matthias, Miss Unity, is, you know, everybody praises him rightfully so for his writing and his performance skills. But I think as a visual artist, he's he's right up there. It's just as well. He always reminds me of somebody. If Jean Genet and Cindy Sherman had a kid, of course, it'd be um, IVF, I guess. It would be Unity, because he does these incredible tableaus where he creates these unbelievable. It's in person, it's something, but he's done these tableaus like Strike Up the Band. Like, I just saw this. He didn't send me. I just saw this photo and it blew me away. And every detail of it is so exquisite. And this is the second fracas that I did with Unity. So I just want to. All right. So this is called Strike Up the Band Book Report. Know your place, my darlings, who dare to dream as the fall is heavy with wonder over your sense of entitlement that asks, what makes you so special? Pummeling against a suffocating rim in ecstatic abandon, jubilating in the particular sense that surrounds you inside a textile plastic womb as you listen to the fluctuating wails from the tendrils of passion slithering along lubricated walls to a ritual mating melody of romantic verse and pelvic thrusts that vibrate and stretch into angelic breathing, unleashing a gale of erotic energy as moans and gasps carry you through different symphonies of sensual movement that create a longing for touch until such a need builds to echo your name inside the dark synthetic tunnel, slick with sweat, fighting to grasp the luminous bursts of light just beyond reach as I fill my lungs again and again, gasping for air, while I dream of your hands and my moist memories of you and the ripple of a dance and the sensual smell of sunshine that sends a thread of pleasure aching for contact until I can only pant in short heaves that threaten to smother me before I can implore you to come back and save me by taking what is already yours, given freely under a liberating light of hope and devotion you refuse to extend. And there's another link. There's one more.
Yep, it's in the chat as well.
Oh, it is? Okay, all right.
The Garco Gazette one.
I'm having a okay, hold on. Shot. Okay.
I can send it again if you're having a little trouble there.
Um yeah, I'm not
Sure.
let's see.
There you go.
I can't access it. Can
Um,
somebody e- can somebody else read it then or something? I mean, I it's
just so if you are you not seeing the chat at all or?
now.
Oh, okay. There is there a button to bring, there should be a button maybe on the bottom to bring up the chat if you
Yeah,
close.
yeah, it usually is. Let me see, but I had it before and it just disappeared. Let me see. Oh, okay, here I got it. I got
Okay,
it.
awesome.
Uh, okay, sorry. All right, this is a fracas I did. A solo one. I did the image and wait, I gotta get these. I gotta get all these people off. Okay, Bumble stumble. Last week, after more than 17 months on the dating app Bumble, I achieved a first. A woman, a very, very hot woman, finally responded to my profile pic and contacted me for a potential date. I was so excited and a bit flustered about how to properly respond. So I drove over to my grandfather's apartment and showed my grandpa the exotic looking woman named Anka who contacted me. Gramps was famous in his day as a successful womanizer, so I needed to get his advice on how to proceed with this beauty. When Grandpa saw Anka's profile photo, he said, "Good Lord, she's built like a brick shithouse." I thought his response disgusting and insensitive, and it got me really upset until Gramps explained that in his day, that's what they used to call really sexy women loaded with wonderful curves. Go figure. I've rarely been successful with women due to my intense shyness and a proclivity towards body rashes, the cause of which my dermatologist still claims is a mystery. I've been on many dating sites, but each time I've contacted a woman for a potential meetup, I was either ignored or turned down. Each rejection stoked my insecurity, and I eventually stopped sending out requests to avoid being crushed. But Bumble is a different kind of dating app. Only women can make the first move, not men. So I was able to eliminate the humiliation of constantly being turned down. But the 17-month silence most certainly did not engorge my ego. My friends insist I My friends insisted I need a great opening line to break my shyness during my first face-to-face with lovely Anka. They threw out many lines, and I mulled a few over as possibilities. I should have read this before. I was sitting at a Starbucks table for more than an hour before our initial meeting, running lines in my head, drinking cup after cup of decaffeinated herbal tea to help soothe my nerves. I saw Anka the moment she pushed open the cafe's door. She was even more attractive than her Bumble profile photo. I waved to get her attention. As she approached my table, I stood up, extended my hand, and we introduced ourselves. My hand was clammy, and I feared my handshake a bit too unmanly. "Oh my God, you look so hot you could be arrested for global warming," I blurted out. She eyed me up and down and then sat down in the chair opposite me. I was fumbling for another line when she said, "Arnaldo, have you ever been arrested?" Trying to appear witty, I responded, "No, not yet. Have you?" "Just once in this country," said Anka. Her response was a surprise. "Why were you arrested?" "I was arrested for peeing on my ex-lover's grave at Greenwood Cemetery." "Wow, you must have been really angry at him, Anka." "Absolutely not. I adored the man." "So why did you pee on his grave?" Anka drew a short breath, the pain evident on her face. "I was just crying from the place I miss him most." All right, that's me for tonight. Thank you.
Blick, Blick, I think you read that second one once before, but it still fucking got me this time. I I I've spoken before about how much I love your ability to write unreliable narrators, right? And to get at like the humor in mundane human like conversation. And this second piece really does all of that. Like you do a wonderful job of capturing like the profound awkwardness of dating, right? There are so many like even before you get to the punchline, there are so many like wonderful little details here, like the facial rash and the really awkward like opening to the conversation. It's all very good and it's all very like true to life as well. I also really enjoyed the Unity piece as well. That's a fantastic photograph, and your text really pairs remarkably well with the photograph and like gets at something fundamental about the essence of that photo, I think. So yeah, thank you, Blick. All right, and next up tonight is Rudy. Hey, Rudy.
What's up?
Hey, man, how's it going?
Oh, great. So I'm gonna read a piece of game auto fiction, I guess it would be. Oh, can you put the link in? I don't have any. I have it open on my thing, but
Yep,
I'm
I
actually
put the link is in the chat.
cool, cool. This this piece, this piece is called "Pieces of Me." Yeah, it's about a game. Hourglass 2021 is a computerized board game I created before I realized game development at this point in human history is a loaded gun that can only misfire and blow your hands off. When I shared it on Reddit, one person gave helpful design related feedback, and 8 retards dragged me behind the pickup truck of social justice because the game used gender in a way they didn't like. I think that's a medium tech lynching because I feel like board games occupy a place between our base survival needs and the higher tech of actualization, or whatever you want to call it. That place is play, and Anita Hill I'll die on. My game design portfolio is a locker room full of nooses. Looking back at my gamography makes me feel like that one black NASCAR driver, because when I think about all the functionally inert shit I've made, I just want to go out, steal some native dude's souped up wagon from Sunoco, and drive 200 miles per hour down the road until a high speed collision rolls back that aftermarket tint colored rain curtain. Checkered flag. And it's checkered because my no exit hell scenario is probably a room with 3 other people who like board games, but don't like them like I do. I won't lie. Hourglass is not a complex game. To play it, you just have to be a chronically unhappy man, Hugh Brooks and Dunn saying, and women too, who has gender identity feels and enjoys the urgency of team fights and League of Legends and wants to explore how cumulative mistakes made under pressure change the outcome of a game where the ability to exert influence over certain victory deciding factors may be out of your control. That sounds complex. Maybe I am a liar. I do lie to myself across the board each day when my brain says factually, you're a failure and a faggot and you shouldn't be making games anymore. Either way, Hourglass is a ball of confusion. There's too much information to process strategically or even thematically. When it's your turn, you strategize, you press the button, then you have 6 seconds to execute your moves. If you can't do them in 6 seconds like you thought, that just sucks. The game doesn't try to spin this in a hopeful, fail forward way either. This mechanical feature is personal. The gender theming of the game, flippable hourglasses that wax and wane in masculinity or femininity as their sand runs out, might just be a red herring for the real portrait of me that's shallowly buried in the design. The hand-drawn stick figure of an overloaded fuck-up being slowly overrun by life's many hostile forces. Hourglass has 5 unique pieces, 5 types of guy, and if you were young, or even just my EMDR therapist, you might say they're pieces of me, segments of my nigger rig Voltron. The Ashley Simpson single sung as a ballad to my demons instead of to God or her boyfriend or whatever. Look, violence pieces capture others or hide behind them like cowards. Here's violence, a piece that comes out early and often in my life. It's always coupled with a rush strat that never pays off. Male violence always moves towards the enemy. That's everything. But can I improve my position with it? The holes in my walls say no. And when I turn and retreat in those pink, misty, feminine moments of insecurity, it's towards friends. Emotional, friendly fire. Social combat is always awkward in games and in real life. Libido pieces suicide mate with opposite gendered enemies to create a friendly token that reproduces. A mosquito, Kurt said. My libido is anything but. Didn't Sir Mix-a-Lot say that? I used to look up castration drugs online when I was younger, not for gender reasons, just because I wanted to stop compulsively masturbating. Not for gender reasons. Not for gender reasons. Not for gender reasons. I used to look up castration drugs online when I was younger. Padme asking, for gender reasons, right? Intense stare. For gender reasons, right? Gaze pieces restrict movement and flipping. My gaze is weak as fuck, liminal, transient. My stare can't prevent someone from flipping the page, the switch, the script. Maybe the reason I attempt eye contact so much is because I want to Medusa someone with my gaze. Total captivation. But my fixations are never human. They're eidolonic serial killers of interest. Dexter for group chats. Dead hobby horses. Glue for me, a trap for others. Space pieces can change the gender of board tiles. Space and time are linked, habitually navigated addresses as purple as bruised skin, curved by my black hole mind. Space-time curvature plays with perception sometimes. Sometimes I imagine that my inability to capture attention with my games comes from my unwillingness to lock into anything intellectually or ideologically. Nah, maybe. No. Wait. Well, maybe. Manipulation pieces control the game by freezing or unfreezing hourglasses. Manipulators control time. Time management is a skill I possess in games. Maybe. Not elsewhere. My brain's calculations must lack delta time, since the slowdown that happens when daily operations intensify, more people, more events, more processing, is really noticeable to my eyes. My depression, a public secret, is always dilating the worst 24-hour cycles, extending them to Naraka-like lengths through nefarious division. 86,400 seconds divided by 6 seconds of execution, 14,400 intervals with complex gameplay over one day, and I know I can't execute that much. The best, arguably, league player Faker couldn't execute that much. The whole ass state of Texas couldn't execute that much. 6 seconds of execution, time enough for love? The tism that keeps my non-game interest migrant and forever unfulfilling says, too long, Lazarus long. 6 seconds of execution, time enough to die? In Chicago, maybe. In my rural hometown, we just freeze. 6 fucking seconds of strategic execution. Which pieces do I micro? Which pieces flip so that I won't? Which interval of today will I fumble hardest? What's today again? On a Monday, I am waiting. On a Tuesday, I am fading. And by Wednesday, I can't sleep. And that's it.
Man, this is fucking ingenious, man. I I love the idea of like taking this format, right? The format of like the design doc or like the game debrief, right? Like the idea being that generally a document like this would be about why the game succeeds or fails, like taking apart of the mechanics, how can we improve these mechanics, what's working, what isn't working. And instead, it becomes this lens through which you take your life apart and look at like what's succeeding or more commonly what's failing, right? And
Right.
like as a concept that's like brilliant, but your execution really really like goes above and beyond that, right? Because there's another version of this that's just completely sad and like depressed and hopeless. And this don't get me wrong, this is a very sad and a very depressed and very hopeless piece, but there's so much humor throughout, right? I love the use of the Anakin meme. I think this is the first time I've actually found the use of that meme funny. um but and the way that you're willing to be like so direct and so self-effacing about it without losing a sense of humor. And well, and you know what? Also, though, it still functionally works as a critique of the game. Like you're still looking at
Hmm.
the mechanics of the game and coming to conclusions about like why those mechanics didn't click with other people and things like that. So that it actually like succeeds at the premise, like, and that's not simply like a hook that you abandon. I think makes it even more effective too. It's a really like wonderfully insidious piece of writing, and yeah, man, it's really good.
You cool, thanks, man. Yeah, it's like a post-mortem of this game. And yeah, that's basically it.
And
Thank-
only the game and nothing else.
Yeah, right.
All right, man, that was fantastic.
Thanks.
Thank you. Um, Derek Main is up next.
Hello, all right. Thank you for having me. Thank you, William.
Hey, Derek.
Hey, what's up, man? Um, Thanks to Unity, it's really awesome and special to be involved in Unity's launch, and I love Unity. In honor of the time that we worked together at the last estate, I've picked out my piece, which will not have a link, which I'll explain here in a minute. But the last estate, I'll just say quickly, since a couple of folks on here were involved in the project. Um, had this purity of artistic collaboration and just fun that I have not found since, and hope to find again one day. I miss it very much, even though I have less than no time for it, the way that kind of we all do and get burned out. But that time getting to work with Unity was very special. And I'm going to read a piece that was originally published in the Bear Creek Gazette. And there is no link because there is no Bear Creek Gazette. This was run by Stuart Buck. Stuart Buck was an integral part of the last estate and remains so. And if Stuart Buck ever comes home, then perhaps we shall set up the crumbling place again. But it's special, very special Unity on a private joke. I understand why that's hilarious. This piece is called Six Turtles at a Crossing. I drove to the DQ Grill and Chill at or around 11 a.m. By 7 p.m., I was on the news. I just sat there. I brought several books with me to pass the time. At the drive-thru, I ordered a small vanilla Butterfinger Blizzard. I pulled up to the first window, locked my doors, rolled the windows up, read, and did not move for 5 hours. I brought several books to read, not knowing what mood I might be in. I brought 60 Stories by Donald Bartholomew. The first story was about margins. It bored me. I decided it was too highbrow for me. The honking comes first and eventually fades into the landscape of things. Next, I read an essay on the color blue. Disgusting. I closed my eyes. It's been like this for some time now, whatever this is. My children are at school. My wife is at work. My phone is at home. The doors are locked. My windows are rolled up, and people are screaming at me and banging away at the glass. I am meditating. I read a story about cocaine and another about murder. The first of the first responders arrived shortly after noon. Some moments of your life just weigh more than others, and some moments less. I wanted to exist today. I wanted to prove to myself that I existed today. I wanted a memory to sear, to announce to the world that I exist today. I wanted an act to be archived, to convince a future world existing without me that I once existed within it and it within me. I put my car into park in the drive-through line of the DQ Grill and Chill and sat and waited for the world to reply. The locksmith came around 2 in the afternoon. The negotiator kept yelling, "What are your demands?" My wife arrived at 3:15, frowning. My children looked small and frightened. I read a story about a waiter. My grandmother once sat in the car with the doors locked and the windows rolled up before I was born. In her garage, someone once said something about a hose. I was arrested at 4 p.m. My car was towed. My books were confiscated. My wife was angry. My children were confused. My parents were kept in the dark. My work was informed I had a stomach bug. I closed my eyes and tried to forget anything at all was happening. She closed her eyes and waited for it all to end. I have a right to remain silent.
Derek, I had no idea. You've read this piece at Misery Loves Company before, and I love this piece. This is one of my favorite pieces that you've written, and I had no idea this was originally published at Bear Creek. I forgot. The existential crisis in the Dairy Queen drive-through. It's such an unbelievably it's such a beautiful premise. It's such an ingenious premise. And I love the way it unfurls and it gets more and more absurd. And then it gets really sad, right? It gets increasingly comic, it gets increasingly manic, like the hostage negotiator shows up, and you think that's going to be the tone of the piece. And then the family shows up, and there's this moment of profound sadness where you get this insight, like this brief fragmentary insight into what is going on with this guy, and then the piece is over. Now, I'm I happen to know of a publication that has historically rehomed pieces that were unpublished elsewhere for various reasons. I'm not saying it. Now, I do believe that publication recently closed for submissions, but maybe they'd make an exception if the editor really loved a piece like this.
Thank you very much. Yeah, a lot of I'm a very impatient person, and one day somebody was in front of me at the drive-through DQ Grill and Chill, and I was very annoyed, and I was like, well, you know what could be funny? Anyway, thank y'all very much.
It's a great concept, Derek. And really, just email it to us, and we'll get it back online, so it doesn't have to exist in Bear Creek limbo forever. Not that I don't think Stu is coming back. Of course, Stu is coming back someday, right? It's
It
only
will
a
be
matter of time. It's like the return of Christ. Certainly, it's going to happen eventually.
it will be featured in Plots, my short story collection.
All right, thank you, Derek. And Forrest Mulerath is up next. Forrest, it's been a little while.
Hey guys, yeah, and it's I've checked out of social media, and I've wanted to come back to the men's support group. I mean, Misery Loves Company. It's good to be back now. I really love that piece, Derek. I remember reading it when it was published, and it's fantastic. I'm glad you read it. Yes, so really happy to be here celebrating one of the greatest crimes, unsolved crimes in American history, who killed Mabel Frost. I'm going to read 3 short poems. And the first one I chose because I actually met Mabel Frost. I'm not bragging. I don't want anybody to get jealous. I know that some people get jealous of that, but I did meet Mabel. She came in as her nickname suggests, like a hurricane, and she left quickly, and she left me exhausted. I'm not going to say it was good or it was bad, but it left a deep impression on me. I didn't sleep for days, and I had to go to work. and I was teaching. I was tutoring a kids in Harlem. And I was very tired. I was very tired, and I was very brain damaged. And I had a very talented young lady who really wanted to read William Carlos Williams with me for her English class. And the just the contrast in the letters were just like burning my eyeballs. And I wrote this poem. Then, while I was trying to read as good as the young lady, as well as the young lady could, and I sent it to Mabel then, and then she died. And then Mabel died. I'm not sure how, I'm not willing to say how she died, but she did die after I sent this poem. It's called A Few Days in Jersey. It goes, Dr. Kiki Carlos Williams, after days on end injecting himself from his big leather doctor's bag while speculating, what if Elsie grew a dick? Became so hungry, he ate the stones stuffed with the speculum deep inside his belly, as he thought to himself, that deer in the yard eating goldenrod is an idiot. And then I'm going to read a sudden and glorious spring. A flight of pigeons burst from the ground before my face. Craig could go to jail for a long time this time. I just returned from Cuba, and New York needs more jazz. Angel has been at her mom's place for months and has not responded since last week. Sometimes psychosis comes and goes in plateaus. Unless you think it's better that we cut things off completely, you should really try to get in touch. Kiss me again in the whispers of tulips and daffodils floating through the morning sun, because by the time May rolls around, with the climate like boiling seas of the apocalypse, maybe I'll have blocked your number. Either you won't go to heaven or I won't go to heaven, so we won't go to be in heaven and I won't see you there. All right. And then one more. This one. Okay, I'm gonna read this one. I read this one. I read these all here, I think, but I read this one here before. And this one, everybody has to not die of a drug overdose after I read this. It's a spell to not die of a recreational drug overdose. So if you do, I'll forgive you, but please, dear God, don't do that again, because I don't want to think about it anymore. So please don't die of a drug overdose. It's called repetition compulsion. Ever since Bumpy died, you've had this thing, repetition compulsion. You're quite good at it. Could be a professional, in fact. Well beyond phlebotomist, psychiatric nurse, or therapist, in fact. I want to know what death is, too. Slipped on a banana peel, I repeat, too, compulsively. You've had this thing with repetition compulsion, a Freudian term, no doubt. Ever since Bumpy died, it keeps repeating. I'm no analyst, no doubt, but I'll keep repeating. You've had this thing with repetition compulsion. I saw it before Bumpy died when you did it to me, and I'll never stop saying how gorgeous your music used to be the day we met, when you almost did me like Bumpy. You did me dead. When you did me till I almost died, compulsion prep to repeat. How many did you resuscitate from Bumpy? Hey, that's a pretty cool trick. The Irish cop in Boston had to admit you killed him and you brought him back to life. I like that kind of stuff, the Irish cop said. You're like the son of God to your enemy in arms. Your magic works on the Boston cop, perhaps your most pernicious trick. And we did it again at the AIDS Museum, where you brought me back, in fact. And then we did it again at the AIDS Museum, where the river was black, two cloaked figures rowing me back when you pulled me forth, the two men in masks. One can live with AIDS. The compulsion, it is tiresome, yet manageable, but the repeating is unlivable, and I am livid. It is only a matter of time ever since Bumpy died, and you have this thing, and it repeats, and I want to too. That's it.
Holy shit, Forrest. First of all, I don't think you've read these at Misery Loves Company before. I could be totally wrong. You may have read them like years ago, and there have been so many of these fucking things that I don't remember. But these are fucking marvelous. I'm in awe of what you're doing in these poems. Like the tension, especially in the last two, between like the comic and the tragic, right? Like these are wound so tight. And I love like the repetition compulsion thing because it's a fundamentally comic device, right? Like when somebody cannot help but repeat themselves, it's hilarious. Like it's you want to laugh, right? Like you want to laugh. But the actual content of this poem is is so fucking tragic, right? And the imagery and stuff, there's that one stanza, holy shit. Like, and then we did it again at the AIDS Museum, where the river was black, two cloaked figures rowing me back, when you pulled me forth to two men in mass. Like that, like as an image of death, as like a mythic image of death, that hits so fucking hard, but it's in the midst of this poem that's like otherwise, that like the very structure of which is comic, right? The very structure of which feels like a vaudeville routine. And the way that you balance that, like the oh my God, man, it's so effective. And you do something similar in the second poem as well. I love near the end of the poem that section about heaven, right? Where on the surface, like that's so absurd. The idea, it's like in a poem about like a breakup poem or a poem about like two people going their separate ways. Like, well, one of us better not go to heaven because like we can't both be there because we won't be able to tolerate each other. Like that's such a hilarious thought. Like it's so absurd, it's so extreme, and yet like the underlying emotion there is once again it's really sad. It's profoundly sad, and I don't know. These are really really fucking effective poems for us. Now I'll stop gushing about them. They're great, man.
Thank you.
And just quickly before we move on to the next reader, I have the last couple of minutes I haven't been letting someone in from the waiting room unless I recognize them because we're kind of deep in the night and I don't want to have trolls in here. But if you have a friend or something in the waiting room, just let me know. Mention it in the chat and I will let them in. All right. Um, next up after Forrest is Robert McCready. Hey, Robert.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Hey, man, how's it going?
I'm doing well, thanks. It's been a fun day and I got to eat at my favorite restaurant. It's called Bouchon on North Lexington in Asheville. We had filet of fish. I'm just teasing. It was steak au poivre. I think that's how you pronounce it. And but yeah, it's good to be here. I'm a little bit shook from the last poem that Forrest read. I liked it. I'm really thankful and honored to be here to celebrate the life of Mabel Frost. I'm sad that she's gone, and I'm also wondering what she and O.J. Simpson might be talking about right now. And speaking of, back in the mid 90s, when Nicole Brown Simpson revealed that she had information leading to the arrest of Hillary Clinton, a lot of people would say that my mother looked like Nicole Brown Simpson, and it was kind of fun. And it's her birthday today, and I want to read something that I wrote about her, and I want to dedicate it to her. And it's called The Biggest Ball in the World, that is on Hobart. And I sent you a link. Thank you for posting it. And I'll read it now. The biggest ball in the world. In late July, in the mid 90s, I begged Mom and her fiance Paul to buy me a big ball at Rose's department store. Green and white swirls, it seemed 6 feet wide. It took up the whole back seat. It wasn't a beach ball, but one that came already inflated. No, Paul said. He looked at my mom to see if the preliminary answer stood. Let's get it, she said, looking up to him, smiling. Paul rolled his eyes and pulled it from the top of the net cage that held many others just the same size. I sat next to it in the back seat. It was the biggest ball I'd ever seen. Mom and I talked about how much fun it would be to bounce it in the pool, but it was Sunday evening, so no pool because they had to go to work in the morning. Paul, Mom, and I formed a triangle in our big front yard. We played a game where we bounced it from one person to another. Let's see if we can not let it hit the ground, Mom said. We made it one round, from me to Mom to Paul. Then to me, to Mom again, only it went over her head. Mom's competitive, so she jumped to hit it. The sun was setting. The ball was bigger than the sun. Mom's nails barely scratched the surface. It went towards the fence. We moaned as a group. The ball bounced on top of the chain link fence and popped. It made no sound, only the release of its air, and shriveled up into rubber shards. Oh, Mom said. Oh, I said. Maybe we can get another, Mom said. She sounded sad or disappointed or guilty. But we didn't replace the ball because Rose's closed early on Sundays. And Mom and Paul had to work in the morning. And I'd already begged that one. And they broke up. And Paul moved away. And they married other people. And I grew up. Thank you.
I love this story, Robert. I hadn't read it before, and I really dig what you're doing here. I love how the destruction of that ball becomes like the moment of the end of childhood, right? Like everything before that moment is pure innocence and beauty and hope and excitement. And after that, the whole world falls apart in this beautiful way. And I love the way that you structure that within the piece. Like so much energy is given to like the act of obtaining the ball and like playing with the ball and describing the ball and all of this. And then the annihilation of your entire childhood universe is a series of like really short rat-a-tat-tat sentences. And that's gorgeous and it's effective. And you would think that would undercut the trauma of it, but actually it enhances the trauma of it because it's so unexpected and it all happens so quickly. It's a beautiful piece, Robert. Thank you.
Thank you for saying so. I appreciate it.
And I hope I didn't cut you off. Also, did you have it occurred to me after I started talking that you might have additional pieces to read or something. So if I cut you off, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I'm keeping it short. That's
Oh,
all.
awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Robert. That was a beautiful piece. So, up next is Stephanie You Doing Stephanie, Steph, I hope I didn't just mangle your name, but Steph, you're up next.
Hey, Will. It's been a really long time.
It has. I think it's been a
Yeah,
couple of years since the last time you came to MLC, actually.
yeah, I know. But part of that is y'all's fault for shutting down, so um yeah, super stoked to celebrate Filet of Fish. I mean Mabel Frost. I have two poems. I'll drop them in the chat. They're pretty recent. Okay, so I'm I'm gonna read the second of the poems that I just linked, and it's titled DMs. So you have to scroll down a little. Okay, so this poem is titled DMs, and every line in this poem is an actual DM that I've received. Are there therapists who specialize in helping people give up on their dreams? The essence of humiliation is that the humiliator has a point. My tragedy is I want to be a muse, but I'm only a writer. Nobody's perfect unless they're fully compensating me. You're on a moral vanity trip like I've never seen. Do you have a SoundCloud? Fuck, I'm already so smart, but imagine if I had never eaten seed oils. Wearing clear heels to a Catholic sacrament is hot. I'm having trouble finding poets as tall as Wallace Stevens. Sorry, I don't date sexual deviants. Are you a woman? Let's take out huge loans together. I don't know this hoe. Maybe it's autofiction and maybe it isn't. If God doesn't make us talk, it wasn't real. Okay. And then I have a second poem. This is really weird because I started using Instagram in the last year and I realized like there are literary magazines that are based off of Instagram and not on Twitter. And that just like blew my mind. I was like, okay, this proves like like the Marvel multiverse theory. Like I didn't know that there were literary magazines on Instagram. But this is one of them. Okay, this poem is about UFOs. Okay, it's titled Flying Saucer. A still but still gleaming eye, very much alive, was the moon that night, over whose avaricious surface a dark disk darkened, like a coin laid on an eyelid. I turned to my friend, a blonde as a blonde in a movie poster, said, "Did you see that?" But her mouth was an O, as in UFO, objecting to the sight above. I didn't tell her what I thought, which was that you had sent the saucer, since our earthly love had faltered, and you still wanted me to have a ride. Yes, love, so I see you will do anything. And love, yes, I am beaming up to go anywhere as your bride. That's it. That's it.
Steph, those were wonderful. I love the DM poem, and I love the way the DM poem is structured. Like there's plenty of work that like deals with Twitter or social media as a means of like creating poetry or creating art, right? But what you really like transcended that art form here, I think, in specifically in the way that you've structured this piece, so that it really feels conversational. And the way it ends too, like it finally fulfills the promise of becoming a poem with those final two lines, that last couplet. But the way that it's structured, so it feels like a back and forth rat-a-tat conversation. And yet every one of these lines is like concise and precise and biting in a really like wonderfully hilarious way. I love the essence of humiliation is that the humiliator has a point. I mean, that's fantastically true, and yet it's a thing that absolutely no one wants to admit, right? And the UFO poem, man, this is so beautifully deconstructive. I love the fact that the way it opens with what the reader assumes is the image of the UFO, right? Like, but it's the moon, and then the UFO arrives, and the way that you take apart like the term UFO and work the different elements of it into the poem elsewhere. And the narrator's voice that you've cultivated here is like so beautifully unreliable. Like, and it's that unreliability is conveyed very like concisely and very subtly through like just very small word choices and choices and how it's structured and everything. And it's really beautifully effective because it doesn't, unlike me, it doesn't have to go on at copious length just to make its point, right? Like it drags you like the tractor beam into the mind of this like lovelorn character in just a beautiful and effective way. Anyway, thank you, Steph. Thank you, Steph. I really enjoyed it. And I'm I'm up next. So I don't read often at Misery Loves Company. In part because I really haven't written anything for like a year. I've been going through a pretty rough period of writer's block here. And so I've the last I've had to read last I've had to read three times in the last like 4 weeks after not reading at all for months before that. So I've had to go digging back in the archives to find something to read. And so recently I already read a flash fiction piece, and a couple of weeks ago for the Thumbsucker launch reading, I read like a really depressing personal auto fiction piece. So I think I'm going to do something very different tonight, and I think I'm going to try reading a game. Because after all, Misery Tourism started as a site for Rudy and I to share our stupid custom RPGs. So I'm going to read a game tonight. This one it's from 2019, and I wrote it right after watching the Michael Jackson documentary Leaving Neverland, excuse me, about basically about the kids he abused, right? And how they were coping with that abuse. And it kind of struck a nerve with me, not only because like the stories of their abuse were so mortifying, but also because they had like these really weird nostalgic feelings about the man mixed in with all of that shit. And because it struck a nerve on like one of my favorite hobby horse pet things, which is like, you know, freedom of expression and cancellation bullshit, and whether we should like destroy the work of somebody, of an artist who like did bad things. And so this is a very 2019 piece. Anyway, anyway, I'm just gonna read it now. Uh excuse me, the piece is called Phylactery, and I think I put the link in the. It's also a very like D&D piece because it's got references to stupid role-playing terms and shit in it. Anyway, it's called Phylactery. The wizard who raped you is dead. The salacious details of his death, which the interplanar tabloids are circulating throughout the multiverse with perverse intensity, bring you no solace. He was never brought to justice, never forced to face a tribunal of archmages and answer for his crimes, never disgraced and defrocked. His staff and all the power and prestige it signified, both actual and ceremonial, remained unbroken to the end. But even that isn't the root cause of your sleeplessness. The conjurer of your night sweats, or the summoner of the demon that perches beside your bed and whispers incantations and dirty words to you as you lay paralyzed. No, the thing that fucking gets you is knowing that your rapist will live again. Wizards of great power can transgress even the rules of death, and that bastard was nothing if not transgressive. By binding their souls to an item of intense personal importance, using arcane runes and magic script to bridge the infinite distance between being and not, they can write themselves back into existence, even after their hand falls eternally still. You are sure of this, certain. As long as his phylactery exists, he will return, and he will molest again. Luckily, you were close enough to him to know his habits and guess his schemes. You know where he's hidden his soul, in the voluminous in the voluminous tome where he recorded all of his hoodoo knowledge, his book of spells. It must be destroyed. You band together with a party of his other victims and set out for his towering sanctuary. The door is locked, but he gave each of you a spare key many years ago, before he defiled you, when you were still his wards. You let yourselves in and head directly for the library. Go to the nearest bookshelf and remove a book at random. Be sure that you don't know the identity of the book until it's fully in your hand and it's too late to reconsider. Sit in a circle with your fellow survivors and open the book. Flip to any page and read any sentence aloud. Share a story about your time with the wizard inspired by what you just read. Focus on the feeling the words evoke and not their context within the larger work. If the words make you feel nostalgia, tell a story about how you used to admire the wizard, his charisma and talent, what drove you to dream of becoming his ward, how blessed you felt when he chose you. If they trigger fear, talk about his mercurial temper, his veiled threats and appeals to his power, how he coerced and manipulated you into decades of silence. If they inspire wonder, describe the awe you experienced as you witnessed one of his most impressive spells, what it felt like to travel between planes of existence for the first time, with your hand in his. If the sentence is romantic, talk about how you were convinced that he loved you, how he told you that you were his soulmate and gave you every reason to believe him until he brought a new child home, and so on. Once you've told your story, pass the book to the person on your left. If the sentence contains sex, even if the sex is only implied or presented in delicate, evasive language, do not share a story. Instead, go to the top of the page where you found the sentence and read the page in its entirety while everyone listens in silence. When you finish, pass the book to the person on your left without comment. Whenever you or one of the other survivors are handed the book, you must make a choice. You can read another sentence and tell its story as detailed above, or you can suggest that the book be burned. If you suggest that the book be burned, any survivor can counter by saying, "I'm not ready." If they say this, their wishes must be respected. Open the book, choose a sentence, read, repeat. Open the book, choose a sentence, read, interpret, pass, repeat. Continue in this way until someone suggests burning the book and no one asks for more time. Now you must decide whether or not you will burn the book. Talk about it as a group until you arrive at a consensus. Everyone must agree before you can act. You cannot vote. Majority will not rule. Every voice must be respected. Don't give up if you find it hard to reach a unanimous decision. Remember what you would be walking away from. This mission is too important to abandon. If you decide not to burn the book, you must find your closure within it. Open the book again and read a random sentence aloud, as before, but don't interpret it. Instead, the player to your right will tell you how your life turned out, based on what you read. They'll narrate a story from your future. They can reveal as much or as little as they wish. They can tell you how you're going to die or describe a short, mundane moment that explains nothing. You have no control over what they say. You cannot offer input while they speak, and when they finish, you must accept your fate without comment. Pass the book to them so that they can read, and the person to their right can soothsay. Continue until everyone has glimpsed their destiny, then return the book to the shelf and leave the room. Go home and live. If you decide to burn the book, do it. The method does not matter. Douse it in oil and use a cigarette lighter. Get a book of matches and tear out one page at a time and burn it slow. Preheat the oven to 451 degrees and chuck it inside. Who cares, as long as it's completely destroyed? Even the cover cannot survive. Don't spare the dust jacket if it has one. As the book is consumed, talk about how much better, how much safer the multiverse will be now that the wizard has been destroyed forever. Tell your fellow survivors about your plans for your now unhaunted future. Tell them about your relief, cry, scream, talk over each other. Find catharsis however you can, if you can. Once the book is reduced to ash, the game is over, but your ordeal is not. Set a timer for 1 hour. Return to your spot in the circle, but leave your character behind. Talk about why you decided to annihilate a real book to exercise the memory of a wizard that doesn't exist. Did you get that wrapped up in the story? Did you let your character's thoughts and feelings cloud your judgment? Maybe you never liked that book anyway. Maybe you had to buy it at an inflated price from the university bookstore for some bullshit prerequisite class that you never wanted to take in the first place. Maybe you were reading it when your girlfriend broke up with you. Maybe it evokes painful childhood memories. Maybe its language or style makes you feel self-conscious or inadequate. Maybe you were happy to see it burn. Or maybe, in the moment, it felt like the story you were telling was more important. Did your narrative eclipse its? Hell, did you just think it would be fun to light something on fire? Whatever the reason, you have to talk about it for an hour. Feel free to challenge your fellow players if you feel like their explanation is bullshit. Get as combative as you like, but remember you agreed to destroy the book too. When the timer goes off, order some takeout, put on a 70s exploitation film, or play some League of Legends together, and don't talk about this stupid game ever again. Regardless of whether or not you burned his book, the wizard is dead and the wizard survives. Okay, that's me. So now this would be the end of the night, but I believe we have a couple of special guests. Um, the first one of which, well, I don't know. Am I allowed to reveal the first special guest? I think that now I can reveal the first special guest. The first special guest is Gigi Roland. Gigi, are you coming in all the way from Korea, my man?
Yeah, I'm here in Seoul.
Hey, I'll share the
Woke my
document.
ass up at 9 a.m. today. It's Saturday here. All right, I'll just get to reading then. I got 3 short ones and then one's a bit longer. First one's called Flower. While she scratches my head, she pauses to pull my hair with such gentle fingers that match the speed of its growth. Next one's called Little Squirrel. 2 bites is all it would take to eat me and spit out my bones like a little squirrel eaten by a bear. Maybe 3 bites because of my penis. Third one's called Tree. I want to trust someone with my whole heart, but the internet exists. And then this is the longer bit. I do not know what love is, and you do not know what love is, and if you say you know what love is, I will mistakenly think you are full of shit, and that is how I will love you. Loneliness can change a person. It can make them hateful, angry. Why does no one care about how I feel becomes a recurring thought. Admittedly, I indulged in a bit of that, but I was seldom angry. I just came to realize there is something wrong with me. There is. I'm too soft. Or I am soft. Too soft and too selfish. The world and people are hard, and there is little, if any, place for softness. People act as if softness is something they want in their lives, but once they experience it in full, they find it annoying, cloying, saccharine. Most want it bite-sized, in movies, books, poems, songs in a playlist. Any more than that, and media provides just that. Bite sizes, mouthfuls, morsels. Gentleness is found on the back of the menu, on tap, cold, priced appropriately and served in the proper glass. It only betters the experience. Then it becomes free and the glass is unappreciated. When the tap is open, it floods the floor. Then everyone is unhappy. It's a big fucking mess. The bar will open late tomorrow, but I'm alive, here still, casting glances at a sleeping person I can't be enough for. Why else would one reacquaint herself with the affection of another from days past? It's simple math. Solve for x. It's a simple equation. So why do I need to hear her solution? Why do I need to write this bullshit? Do I crave the words and treatment I'm so sure I deserve? Probably. The way I grew my face has earned me far too much female attention. I just wish it was different. I thought this could be it, that this could finally be it, and I could finally be sure that my heart finally mattered to another as much as theirs mattered to me. That might still be the case. There were shades of that for a few months, but that seems so far gone now. But I still have hope. Why? Ask God if you believe He exists. And if you don't, who cares? Whatever. How could I be sure of love so ready to slip into old clothing? How could I blame someone for wanting to relive what they believe was true final love, or for being excited by the purchase of new foreign clothes? When will I go out of fashion? These anxieties are worthless, I know, but the way they perch in my heart like a murder of ravens ready to feed becomes harder to endure as days pass. How they peck, bit by bit. Every day the heart becomes smaller, more useless, and I have only the heart I was born with. I want to die, but these days I simply lack the constitution. I miss the brazen, confident, sure-footedness of youth. Of being sure I'd kick the chair away instead of towing it back into place while the light nears. Now I'm too aware of what a raven that would be on the heart of my older brother. I selfishly want a woman to accept me for who I am. I will be surprised if I make it to 35, but I thought the same thing a decade ago about how old I am now. That's all I have.
GG, these are wonderful. Man, first of all, I'm really happy to have you back. We've missed you, my friend. But above and that beyond that, I'm happy to have you back and experimenting with longer writing. Because I always dig it when like somebody who's a regular comes with something that breaks the mold and like breaks your expectations for them. And then I think that might be a troll. I hope it was a troll because I just booted them. Anyway, um, anyway, and this, I love this long stream of consciousness piece because it gets at fundamental insecurities that I think we all have in a deeply poetic way. And it's just honestly, like it's just as poetic in its language and its metaphors as your shorter, more concise poems are. And it's kind of remarkable to see you keep that tightrope act up at such a length, right? Like I'm so used to your pieces being these really concise, like almost formatted almost like jokes, right? Where the punchline is heartbreak instead of instead of necessarily a laugh line, although sometimes they're also a laugh line. And your ability to keep that like deeply like profound and metaphorical approach up for a longer piece is I think really, really remarkable. I love the I will be surprised if I make it to 35, but I thought the same thing a decade ago line. Because man, I turned 40 this year, and that is so fucking true. I did not think I would hit, in my late teens, I was like, I'm never gonna make 25. I'll be dead before my life will be over before 25. At 25, I was like, there's no way I'm gonna make it to 30 without hanging myself. At 30, I was like, 35, not a fucking chance. And now, like, I'm not even saying that. I'm not saying that about 45. I'm not saying that about fucking anything ever again because it's fundamentally false. And it's this lie you tell yourself, right? It's this emotional lie, and it feels so like potent to say. It's like, I'm a dead man. There's nothing left to my life. And you get at that though. In this piece, you get at that sense of like feeling exhausted, feeling worn out, and wondering if you can find hope in that way again. And it's a beautiful piece, man. And I have to say something. I know I'm going on too long, but just really quickly about the short poems. The, the fucking squirrel poem, the fucking punchline there. It's so good. It's so good, especially because it prepares you for something else. You think it's going to be this like adorably morbid poem, right? And instead, it's a dick joke, and I appreciate that. And the flower one is just it's gorgeous. Like the idea of like because like running your hands through someone's hair is I think like the consummate romantic act, like the ultimate act of intimacy in the way that like sex simply isn't. Like to imagine someone doing that so slowly that it matches the speed at which the hair grows. There's just something deeply profound about that. There's just something like that like gets at the essence of that beautifully. Anyway, man, it's good to have you back. That was wonderful.
I
Nice
just
to be
want to
back
say,
here.
I just want to say that it's amazing. Gigi leaves the country, and I'm shocked. And he comes back here with this incredibly awesome, serious piece. I mean, he always makes me laugh. His book. And anytime you need a pickup, you could just flip his book. But this was like, I thought Forrest was reading or something. It was really, boy, your trajectory is really great there, Gigi.
Thank you, man.
Beautiful stuff, man. Nice to have you back. Now, I believe we have a second special guest. Calvin, are you with us? Calvin
No,
Westra. No, you're not with
nope,
us?
I'm not.
Oh no, what are we gonna do?
No, I lied. I'm here. I am. Can
Oh,
you can you hear me okay?
beautifully, beautifully.
Hell yeah. I wish I had something cool to say to start. I didn't think of anything to say. Unity is really cool. Thanks for having me. And I'm excited to read my 22-minute piece. I'm kidding. It's like 8 minutes. Okay. I'm gonna start. I feel like there is a way I can use magical realism to make my ex seem like more of a cunt, Hector said in a text message to Klaus at 11:04 a.m. on February 23, 2016. He wanted to rewrite the whole book so readers would see her less as a person and more as some kind of creature. There would be a ragtag crew of paranormal investigators tasked with hunting her down. It would be a game of cat and mouse. Klaus said that seemed pretty extreme. Hector said the cool thing about magical realism was you could calibrate it until it was medium extreme. She would outsmart the investigators most of the time. That way you could draw it out over the whole second part of the book. Also, you probably wouldn't realize she was the creature for a while. It would still read kinda normal. Klaus said he mostly meant the other part, the part where Hector called her a cunt. Hector said she kind of sucked. He just didn't think about it very often, and he was feeling annoyed about that. He sent another text to Klaus that asked, would it be okay if he vented all this bullshit via text message? It probably didn't even matter if Klaus read it. Hector just needed to type it all out. Klaus said, sure. Hector said he had woken up in a pissed off mood, and he felt like everything was her fault, and all she ever did was screw up his life, but he never realized it until later. He was wondering why that was. It was impossible to talk to her about anything. She would change the subject or introduce some ridiculous new fact, and his point would get lost somewhere, or it would turn out he'd broken some sacred rule in how he went about it. He would get confused and give up trying, but then when she left him alone for a while, he started remembering things he was pissed off about, and it left him annoyed and restless. It got hard to think, so he would quit thinking, but then he'd find himself really fucking angry out of nowhere, and he would act different. In his final text to Klaus, he said that after a while, he would realize what she was up to, but it was always way too late, and he never had more than half the story. And if you confronted her about it, she would talk over you until you remembered it the way she wanted. It wasn't until moments like now that he realized how totally full of shit she was about everything. It sounds like she sucks, Klaus said. And then I dated a girl who was kind of like that in college. And then I remember after we broke up, she was calling me, and my friend just looked at me and said, you know, you don't have to pick that up, and it's probably better if you don't. Damn, Hector said. That's always stuck with me, Klaus said. Hector said he could have used a friend like that. Hector said he was reevaluating all the drafts of his book, wondering where he could inject some paranormal stuff into it. We can assume that Hector did that for at least 3 hours because he didn't send texts to Klaus again until 2:14 p.m. when he said he would give the investigators special little radios that they used to record her, but then the radios would always come back empty because she was outsmarting them, or she knew where they were secretly planted or something. Maybe she disabled them. Hector said he hadn't worked out all the kinks yet, but that seemed good. Klaus said he felt a little lost, but it was also almost 2:30 in the afternoon, and his blood sugar was low, and he probably needed restorative chalupas before he could be helpful. Hector said he was pretty sure it was a metaphor, but he was never sure exactly what a metaphor was. The investigators would always be outsmarted by the creature, except later when it blew up his house. Definitely have her blow up your house, Klaus said. And I have a radio when it happens. That's the thing. It will survive the shack explosion somehow, Hector said. And he said that was all that mattered, that the radio had some crazy paranormal shit on it, and that it survived the shack explosion. Definitely call it the shack explosion, Klaus said. Hector would bring the magical radio with him all the way here, and then he could tell Klaus about it. He could say something about the radio having some pretty strange sounds on it, and Klaus would help him realize how fucked everything was because those strange sounds were actually really fucking terrifying. That was the tornado of the thing. Hector not knowing the radio is scary, just like how he doesn't know why he's mad. But all that bullshit would be on his little magical radio that survived the shack explosion, and he could show it to Klaus. He could say something like, I have this magical radio from when I worked for a ragtag crew of paranormal investigators, and it's got some pretty strange sounds on it. What would Klaus say to that? I would say, you should let me come over and listen to it. but I would also say that I'm bringing chalupas, Klaus said. And aside from a few logistical texts about Taco Bell and the credit card machine at the Lincoln Way East location being down, the conversation stopped there, and we can assume that Klaus visited Hector at his house and listened to the radio. Klaus didn't send another text to Hector until late that evening, just before midnight, when he said that he was having a lot of trouble falling asleep and he couldn't stop thinking about what they had listened to on that radio. Hector said he was sorry. He should have warned Klaus about how scary the sounds on the radio were, but he had never thought about it that way, and now he was wondering why that was. Klaus sort of reiterated Hector's point in a text message 2 minutes later that said, "How the fuck do you listen to that and not realize it's the most terrifying shit ever?" Hector said he wasn't sure, but he knew his focus had been elsewhere at the time. There was a lot of talk about his anger, and he didn't want to act out in ways that would feed into that. Hector said he figured Shaqsplosions happened sometimes, and that was life. Everyone has problems. "That was the scariest fucking thing I ever heard in my life," Klaus said. And then he said it felt like he could still hear it in his head. Hector said that went away after a while. Thank you.
Calvin, this this piece murdered me, especially like the first third where you're laying out like the metafictional conceit here, like the idea of like getting revenge on your ex-girlfriend by making her like some scary paranormal entity in this story that you're writing. It's just like it's such an intrinsically funny conceit. And it like speaks to the shit that writers don't like to talk about in terms
Right.
of what motivates their work, right? Like really, if you ask people like, oh, why did you write that piece that way? They'll say, oh, it's a meditation on relationships, They won't say I was trying to get back at my bitch of a girlfriend. And you're willing to, the way this piece lays that all bare, and the way like it's so funny. It's so fucking funny. Like all of the details, the like banal way they go back and forth describing this plot and like breaking it down, the Shaqsplosion shit. Like as a piece of comic writing, it's just gorgeous. And it was absolutely murdering me from minute one, man. It's really good. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Uh so I in the document here, it says that we have a third special guest, but I just have like three question marks here. So I can't possibly fathom who this third special guest could be. Who is our third special guest with us? Oh, someone's unmuted. Is our third and final special guest with us tonight? Oh, I see the filet of fish. Could that be something meaningful?
Problem, libtard.
There we go. Holy shit. Holy shit. What am I looking at here? Tell me what I'm looking at.
Filet of fish. I'd like to say a heartfelt thank you to Blick, Rudy, Derek, Forrest, Robert, Steph, William, Gigi, Calvin, and everyone who came out this evening to celebrate our dear departed sister, Mabel Frost, and our other dear departed sister, Miss Unity. My name is Unity the Clown. I will be reading a short excerpt from Who Killed Mabel Frost. I've got to work early in the morning, so I'm going to bounce when I'm finished. But this piece is called Trash. The real estate company that owned the Antifa squad on Cermak padlocked the gate leading out to the alley from the building's rear door. As a result, we had no place to throw our trash, except in the area between the alley gate and the rear exit. Over the course of several months, that area became a miniature garbage dump. There were 10 or 15 units in the building, and each unit had 2 or 3 people living in it. That added up to hundreds of bags of trash per month, each bag unceremoniously dumped over balconies or heaved out the building's rear door. Eventually, the mountain grew so high, it reached the wooden balconies attached to the second-floor apartments. It was disgusting. The smell was immense. Angry hordes of flies swarmed through fetid clouds of poison gas. Rats tore holes in the bags, scampering about and tracking trails of noxious, festering refuse throughout the building. But we didn't care. We were punk. We were too busy drinking, smoking, shooting up, or going to Food Not Bombs to worry about a little trash. We're lucky we didn't all die of MRSA. The smell from the trash pile reached all the apartments in the building, forming a singularly disturbing bass note for us to build hideous, multi-layered scent concoctions. Ball sweat, BO, ass, dirty armpits, nail polish, hairspray, feet, Newports, Bugler, Jack Daniels, vodka, cupcakes, tequila, donuts, squirt, hot Cheetos, McDonald's wrappers, coffee left sitting out for weeks, half-price ground beef simmering on the stove, post-nasal drip from the world's worst cocaine, blood from bedbug bites smeared across effluvia-encrusted bed sheets. These pungent notes formed the heady aroma that hung in the air of the apartment I shared with Kenya and Joy that summer. We had several bottles of designer fragrance among us, which we sprayed in all the rooms to mask the scent, and all over our bodies and clothes, a substitute for soap, shampoo, and laundry detergent. We kept the bottles on a shelf in the kitchen for communal use. Versace Eros, Jean-Paul Gaultier Le Male, and my contribution and signature scent at the time, Chanel Chance. This was what I wore when I saw tricks to cover the smell of sweat and cigarettes and human degradation baked into my skin. My friend Hannah had gifted me the Chanel without its box, an obvious regift which I appreciated nonetheless. I didn't have much of a nose for fragrance. All I knew was that it was slightly spicy, with a hint of jasmine, and that it made me smell high class, mature, and milfy. One time, Kenya's boyfriend Simon came down to visit from Madison. When I went to hug him, he pulled away, nose crinkled in disgust. "Your dress," he said. "It smells way off." I lifted a corner of the fabric to my nose and sniffed. I couldn't smell anything. It just smelled like garbage smoke and whiskey sweat, same as everything else. I stripped the dress off and laid it on my mattress, then started spritzing it with perfume. I spritzed from left to right, top to bottom, bottom to top, then flipped the dress over and did the same on the back. "There," I said, pulling the dress back on. Simon leaned in, cautiously at first, and smelled me. He said, "that smells so good." Weeks later, after I'd been expelled from Antifa and moved into my solo squad on 21st Street, I kept incense burning throughout the day. I awoke each morning at 6 and sat outside the Lebanese deli on the corner by the park until they opened. I poured myself a large coffee from the self-service station, then ordered 2 loose Newports from the guy at the counter and as many sticks of wild berry incense as I could afford. I paid for everything in nickels, dimes, and quarters. I couldn't get enough of that incense. I burned it all day, often 2 sticks at once. Ocean wind, nirvana, opium, patchouli, and jasmine were my favorites. The squat smelled marvelous, like a different realm, a fragrant oasis in a desert of poverty, abjection, and despair. When the cops finally came to kick me out, they raised their noses to the air, sniffing like prey animals, smelling the wind for predators. This is the best smelling squat I've ever smelled, said one of the cops, frowning in confused awe. You wouldn't believe how most of these places smell. I beamed with pride. It was the most flattering compliment I'd ever received. Trust me, officer, I said. I know.
Guys, can we get a round of applause for Unity the Clown here, guys? So first of all, I am honored
Fuck
to
yeah.
I'm honored to have the debut of a new character here. Like, this is big. This is fucking big. Um, do you want Unity, do you want to talk about the book at all before I go off? Do you want to talk about the book? Do you want to talk about the character? If not, if you want to be a mime, that's
Oh,
acceptable too. But
no, the book is full of sin, and I'm on the verge of renouncing the entire project. But I hope you'll buy it because it helps me buy more fillet of fish.
perfect, beautiful.
Here's for fillet of fish.
Filet of fish. Actually, I hate to say this, especially since like we have filet of fish royalty among us, but I find the filet of fish kind of gross as a fast food sandwich. But
I think that's the point.
I did just put the link in the chat for anyone who wants to buy Who Killed Mabel Frost, and I recommend everyone do. I read the book, I blurbed the book, I fucking loved the book, so buy the fucking book if you haven't already. But I want to talk about the section from the book that you chose to read tonight. And I'm actually really glad you chose this one because I think this is like my favorite essay or chapter or however you want to frame it from the book. And it feels like on like a cursory read or whatever, it feels like this like kind of funny diversion from the more weighty stuff that's going on, like all the like unpacking of identity and politics and ideology. But really, this is fundamental. Like this growing heap of trash, like the living situation here is like so perfectly like exemplary of like the larger like drama of the book, which is like the like thrust being like the way that the conditions in which we live kind of eventually blind us, like the fog of ideology that we live within, like the stinking cloud of ideology and of like identity pretensions and like social conformism and social like pressure, like all of that stuff becomes this odor that we carry with us that we're oblivious to, right? And the like accumulating trash in this squat, like first of all, like the way it's described is it's so good. Like you go into so much detail about all the shit that's just like laying around in the squat house, right? Like, but like you get this growing sense of just how like vile and disgusting this situation is, but also like how impossible it feels to leave, how impossible it feels to extricate yourself from it, and all of the rationalizations that you go through in order to remain in that position. And I love the ending. The ending is the perfect punchline. Like you go through all this graphic detail to establish how disgusting this place is, and yet it's still the best smelling squat that the cops have ever broken into, have ever had to shut down because of the perfume, and I don't know, it's all very effective, it's all very beautiful. The book is wonderful, and thank you, Unity. And
Thank you, William, for your generous comments as always. And thank you once again to all of the readers and to everyone who came. And one more big thank you and round of applause for William and Rudy for putting these on and for all the work that you've done for us over the years. Like I said, I've got to work early, so I'm going to bounce now. But good night, all. May peace be with you always. And always remember, it's a beautiful hospital, and we're lucky to be here. Peace.
Peace. Thank you so much, Unity. I don't know if Unity's already gone, but thank you to Unity for organizing this whole fucking night. All I really had to do is host. Unity got all of the readers together and made this thing happen. So I really appreciate it. And once again, I know I said this a few times. If you haven't bought the book, buy the book. It's really fucking good. It's really good and it's really timely. And I don't think I've ever read like a book about politics and gender and ideology that is so like relentlessly honest and so willing to be nuanced and so willing to like resist the urge to be polemical and to be ideological. So it's a wonderful book. Who Killed Mabel Frost? I put the link in the chat a few times. I'm sure Rudy tweeted it out as well. So buy the book. Anyway, guys, this has been really fucking fun. Excuse me, I am losing my voice, but I am going to leave the Zoom meeting open after we stop recording. If anyone just wants to hang out, we do that every time we do one of these. So if you just want to stick around and hang out, whatever, you can. And if you want to bounce, that's fine too. So once again, thank you to everyone who read tonight. Thank you to Blick. Thank you to Rudy. Thank you to Derek. Thank you to Forrest. Thank you to Robert. Thank you to Steph. Thank you to Gigi. Thank you to Calvin. And of course, once again, thank you to Rudy. Oh, thank you. Thank you. No, thank you to Unity once again. Although also thank you to Rudy, because as I grow increasingly senile, he's going to have to take over more and more responsibilities here. Anyway, thank you, everyone. This has been Misery Loves Company. We do this every Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. If you're watching this on YouTube after the fact, anyone is welcome to come and join us. Anyone is welcome to come and just hang out as well. We tweet out the link right before we begin from our Twitter account at Misery Tourism, all one word. And I've really been rambling, so that's it. We're going to call it a night. Thank you again, everyone. Bye.